Imagine you have $100 in your wallet. You walk into a coffee shop and spend $6. You pull out $6, hand them over, and your wallet is physically lighter. Now imagine the exact same purchase with your phone. Tap, approved. You put your phone away and walk out. Same coffee, same $6. But psychologically, those two purchases may not feel the same. And that tiny difference is changing the way we experience money. Because over the last few decades, we've made spending almost frictionless. For a long time, paying involved a visible moment of separation. You counted your money. You handed it over. You watched what was left. Today, that entire process can disappear into a single tap. And researchers have actually studied what happens when that changes. It's called the pain of paying, the psychological discomfort associated with spending. A 2024 meta-analysis combining 71 papers found a small but significant tendency for people to spend more when using cashless payment methods rather than cash. The effect isn't universal, and it varies with the situation, but the pattern is real enough to have a name: the cashless effect. Another 2024 study found that electronic payments generally produced less perceived pain than cash, with contactless payments among the least painful methods in their sample. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't really a story about cash being good and cards being bad. It's about attention. How much attention does your brain give to the cost while you're making the purchase? Think about spending $50 in cash. You physically remove $50. With a digital payment, the experience can become tap, approved, next. And technology keeps shortening that distance. Cash, card, contactless, phone, saved payment information. One-click checkout. Every step makes the transaction easier. And friction isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes friction is a pause, a tiny moment where your brain can ask, do I actually want this? Remove that pause, and small purchases can become almost automatic. $7 coffee, $18 lunch, $12 delivery, $9.99 subscription, $24 impulse purchase. None of them feels serious by itself. That's exactly why they can add up. Spending doesn't always become a problem because of one massive decision. Sometimes it happens through dozens of tiny decisions that never felt important enough to question. And there's another layer. Your brain doesn't experience every dollar in exactly the same way. A $100 bill sitting in your hand feels concrete. A $100 digital balance can feel much more abstract. And when a $60 purchase becomes three $20 payments, the mathematics haven't changed, but the psychological experience has. That's why the real question isn't, should I use cash? It's, how visible is the cost when I spend? Because convenience has two sides. It can make legitimate purchases faster, easier, and safer. But it can also remove the little moments that make us stop and think. The technology doesn't need to trick you. It only needs to make buying easier than thinking. And that's where relying entirely on self-control becomes a problem. If every purchase takes 1 second, you're asking your brain to make a conscious decision hundreds of times. Instead, you can put friction back where you actually need it. Turn on transaction alerts. Remove saved payment information from websites where you impulse buy. Review your transactions regularly. Wait before making non-essential purchases. Or use cash for a category where you consistently lose track of spending. Not because cash is magical, but because visibility changes the decision. Every purchase is an exchange. You give up money that ultimately represents your time, your work, and your future choices. And you receive something you want right now. Cash makes that exchange difficult to ignore. Digital payments can make it almost invisible. And maybe that's the biggest change modern money has created. We didn't just make payments faster, we made the act of paying easier to ignore. Because the hardest part of spending isn't always knowing what something costs. Sometimes it's remembering that it cost you something at all.